Hello ladies and gentlemen, it's Mike here at Game from Scratch, and today we have a new release of Unreal Engine, and I know so many of you are thinking, yeah, Unreal Engine 5 is here. No, it's not. Unreal Engine 5 is going to be at least a year, folks. I hate to tell you that, but Unreal Engine 4.27 is here, and I gotta set your expectations accordingly. This is Game from Scratch, and obviously most of you are game developers. A lot of this release, not really aimed at us, but there's definitely some really nice stuff in here, so let us go and take a look at what we can expect in Unreal Engine 4.27. So it's available in the Epic Games Launcher. Just go ahead and download it. It is now ready for production use. The first preview version of this was released back in, I think, June. So it is now considered ready to go. And this is Unreal Engine 4.27. It looks a lot like Unreal Engine 4.26, and if you are using Unreal Engine 5, it also looks really outdated, doesn't it? Once you've moved to a new UI, going back to the old one is really quite painful. And I'm just going to showcase two things to you that are new. The first one is probably the sexiest, so let's start there. You'll notice here is a 3D scene. By the way, this is the stylized forest environment from the Unreal Epic giveaway. The first Tuesday of every month, Unreal Engine gives away the 5 assets for free. This is one of them. This is a stylized forest asset if you want to go ahead and check that out. So what we see here, this is the scene, and what you can do now is you can come up here and go to path tracing, and you can get a ray traced or path traced pixel perfect final version of the scene. Now you'll notice this isn't real time. This is actually going to take a little bit of time. So while that is running, let me just go ahead up here and I will showcase another thing that we've got going on. So plugins. You can now come in here and search for something called Oodle. Now, Oodle was part of, there's a company called Rad Game Tools that Epic Games bought a year ago, and they're most famously known for Oodle, a compression software, and Bink, a video codec. Now, let me just see if Bink is as a plugin as well. Bink. Yep, so Bink is here as well, which, by the way, you could turn it on. Bink is used for compressing video. It's been around for ages and ages. If you've played a game, chances are you've probably seen a Bink compressed video. And Oodle is for compressing pretty much everything else. You're going to see here we've got extensions for data, networking, and texturing. They've even using Oodle to compress the amount of traffic you send over the network is being used in Fortnite today. So this is a pretty big deal. It's just not that sexy to show off in a demonstration. So one of those things to be aware of. Oodle is now included directly. It was a standalone branch for a little bit of time there. But the weird thing is Oodle texture, I think there is an additional setup, because if I come here into a texture and we take a look at it, you're going to see there's no Oodle option here yet. So I think there is an initial configuration aspect. I got to set an ini file or something. But there you go. Our path ray tracer has finished, and so you can see the results of path ray tracing. Now, if I move around the scene, it isn't. It's not real time. Just one of those things to be aware of. But you can see path tracing in the final results here in the browser. One of the things that Unreal Engine are really moving towards is giving you the ability to render inside of here, so you can actually create still frames and rendering for final production. And they're moving into the movie production side of things. So that's probably why we were seeing that functionality there. All right, so that's it for the hands-on. There's not a lot to really demonstrate in terms of new tools or nodes or anything like that, but there is quite a bit in this release. And there's also quite a bit in this release I'm going to totally skip over for the most part, because architectural, transportation, automotive, broadcasting live events, film and television, in-camera VFX, a lot of these things are not really aimed at game development. They're important to those people in those other worlds. Now, Unreal Engine is being used more and more and more in a film production environment, and where it's really found its niche is real-time TV. So news sets, TV anchors, the Weather Network are using Unreal Engine for doing things like having their guy in the middle of the presenter in the middle of the stage, and then having like tornadoes ripping in around him. Those are being done with Unreal Engine. Of course, Unreal Engine is being used more and more in TV and film, such as most famously The Mandalorian. So a lot of the updates here are aimed at those people. Again, improvements to the Vfx cameras, including camera support, wall support, that kind of stuff. Here you can see like a virtual news set and the setup and the controls to handle this stuff. Again, it's pretty niche to the most of us, so definitely their virtual camera system has been improved. There is a new Live Link VCam app, iOS app. Support for commercial cameras and so on, but again, kind of out of the purview of most game developers. But if you're in the VFX world, you may find that real example. There's also a new free example. It's gigantic. It's a 20 gigabyte example. But if you want to check out a short film using these new features and functionality, there is that new example in there. This one is definitely relevant to game development. Is GPU light map baking has gotten faster. So many enhancements to GPU lightmaps include support for many features together with increased stability and reliability. System uses GPU as opposed to CPU to progressively render pre-computed lightmaps, leveraging the latest ray tracing with DirectX 12 and Microsoft's DXR framework. So GPU lightmap baking has gotten faster, which is nice. We saw this in action. This is the new Pixel Perfect Final Path Tracer. So that is what gave us from this to this. So it is a pretty profound effect. So if you're doing real-time renders, that kind of stuff, you can see full support for physically correct global illumination, refractions, materials, reflections, refractions, and so on. Also, again, we have in more rendering, so using Path Tracer. Otherwise, you can now use the movie render queue to render multiple cameras as a batch process without having to go through complicated sequencer setups. So again, they're setting up to be more of an Arnold style renderer directly inside of Unreal Engine. Not hugely relevant to most of us, but if you're doing final renders, well, I guess that's an improvement. So again, here is one of probably the biggest thing about 4.27, although it's not, again, the most sexy thing you've ever seen, is Bink and Oodle are now integrated in from having been bought by Rad. So also free. That's also pretty nice. By the way, if you're these are standalone products, they weren't necessarily Unreal Engine products. So if you're using Oodle or Bink and you're using Unity or your own game engine or whatever, it continues to work as normal. The big difference here is all of that technology, so data compression, texture compression, network compression, and Bink Video are all free for Unreal Engine developers, which is pretty nice. And then we get more into the cloud side of things. They have their pixel streaming. This was announced 3 or 4 versions back. Basically, it allows you to render a scene from the cloud into a browser from Unreal Engine or Unreal Engine projects. So you can have your presentation or whatever that you created using Unreal Engine streamed out to a browser using pixel streaming. So this is sort of, Stadia. Everybody's moving towards this pixel streaming to a browser technology, and of course, Unreal Engine has it, their own version as well. So does Unity, by the way. They've also got support for containers, which is a way of handling data in kind of a generic way that can also be used in the cloud. And then we get into the ecosystem. This is definitely an improvement. I did a video recently on the NVIDIA Omniverse, which is actually really kind of impressive. It's sort of like a hub for USD. USD is Universal Scene Descriptor. It's a file format, interchange format created by Pixar to make it so you can move from app A to B to C to D to E without really losing anything. So your pipeline becomes kind of transparent to the data. And this is the whole idea behind Collada. Collada just didn't work. USD seems to be working, and the USD format inside of Unreal Engine is better supported. They've improved things there. And I did show you, if you check that Omniverse video out, taking a scene from Unreal Engine into the Omniverse app, the viewer, and it looks exactly the same. So USD is a really cool technology, and it keeps getting improvements. Datasmith, that's more for like the engineering side of things, but it's another interchange mechanism. They got some improvements there. Again, I'm mostly skimming over it because it's CAD stuff for the most part. We're not really relevant to the world of game development. But if you're in that world, you'll enjoy it. Also got some improvements to XR. Our OpenXR plugin, which enables you to target multiple XR devices with the same API, now offers support for additional features, including stereo layers, splash screens, squirting, place-based bounds, motion control visualizations, and so on. XR is kind of the blanket thing for augmented reality and virtual reality using the same API. So if you're doing, Oculus Quest development or Magic Leap or whatever, that is what you would be working on. And that is it. So if you want to jump in a little bit more detail, there are the release notes available. It's covering pretty much the same particular content that's out there, but definitely a nice thing. So you can get into the release notes, and now these are super granular. So here are all of the changes. And there's a lot in here, but again, this particular release, so here is that iOS app for handling camera and lighting and that kind of stuff. A lot of this stuff is, it's aimed at filmmakers or other areas where Unreal Engine is being leveraged. So this isn't a huge update for the world of game developers. Although, of course, the integration of the Rad GameWorks stuff out of the box is definitely nice. But you're going to see a lot of the things in this particular update were for other industries at this particular time. Now, when Unreal Engine 5 comes around, that's when we will really celebrate, but definitely not a bad little release. And again, I mentioned really briefly off the hop, there is a new demonstration, so if you want to check out the new in-camera VFX functionality, working with things like LED walls, which is the technology used on The Mandalorian, you can check out. So here's the scene, and here is the the rendered scene, etc. If you want to check this out, it is 20 gigabytes in size. That's going to probably take my computer about a year and a half to load up. So I didn't bother demonstrating it, but if you are on the VFX side of things, this is available now. Just search the marketplace for IC VFX, and there is that new project out there if you want to check that out. So that is it. There is Unreal Engine 4.27 was just released. Game developers, you don't got a lot to really cheer about in this one, but the Oodle compression is definitely a nice one. Again, I think there is an additional step required to get texture compression working out of the box. I think you have to edit an INI file, just one of those things to be aware of. But then network compression is there, and compression isn't the sexiest subject ever, but it's really important to the world of game development. So that is definitely a nice step forward, but otherwise, not a ton here for game development this time. Again, the new light mapping improvements there, GPU light mapping, I suppose, are nice. Improvements to the XR, and yeah, that's about it. Let me know what you think. Comments down below, and I will talk to you all later. Goodbye.